Increase in COVID-19 cases after the holidays. But the health department says we have to be cautious in interpreting these numbers. More countries have been added to the travel restriction list. But the DOH says not to fret as a more infectious COVID-19 B117 variant has not been detected in the Philippines. The Justice Department has formally endorsed the Ombudsman, the PACC report on the alleged corruption in PhilHealth. The task force in charge has recommended criminal and administrative charges or complaints against 25 PhilHealth officials. Malacanang seeks sanctions against internet service providers that will fail to curb online child exploitation. And let's check in on the situation of affected residents exactly 1 year after the Taal eruption. Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's a roundup of stories we're watching now. I'm Sean Yao. The UP Octa Research Group is warning the public against the rise in COVID-19 cases in the country. But this might not even be the full picture yet, as more cases are expected to be reported in the coming days due to the Feast of the Black Nazarene. Greg Gregorio with the story.
The UP Octa research team notes a clear post-holiday upward trend in daily COVID-19 cases across NCR. The average daily new cases has increased to more than 400 from below 300 during the holidays. In Metro Manila alone, the reproduction rate or the number of individuals who may be infected from one positive case is now at 1.17. The ideal reproduction rate is below 1. UP Octa's Dr. Guido David tells 1PH's Sa Totoo Lang that the recent tally may not show the full picture of the post-holiday surge yet.
Hindi pa natin nakikita yung clear picture kasi kakabalik lang ng testing natin.
Octa warns that if the number continues to increase, LGUs may have to implement measures to counter the trend. Public health advocate Dr. Tony Liachon echoes this, adding that the number may even go higher as we expect the real tally by January 15. By January 23, he says cases may even increase further due to the recent traslasyon attended by thousands of people.
I would expect that in the next 2 weeks, that's from January 9 to January 23, we might be expecting an increase in the number of cases that is on top of the post-holiday surge that we're expecting. And I'm afraid if these cases will increase further, that may actually lead to stricter quarantine classification.
Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere has confirmed the increased infection rate. She says for the entire Philippines, the infection rate or R0 has reached 1.1. According to the DOH, the recent low COVID numbers were due to the non-operation of some laboratories during the holidays, while some which operated received zero specimen to test.
We have to interpret cautiously itong ating mga kaso sa ngayon.
As for the COVID-19 vaccines, Food and Drug Administration Director General Dr. Eric Domingo says they're on track in reviewing Pfizer's application for an emergency use authorization.
Well, we're at the final stages na kinukulit na namin yung mga reviews ng ating mga experts at saka yung ating regulatory agents dito sa FDA. At tatapusin na namin yan. I'm pretty sure matatapos ko before yung sinet ko sa sarili ko na deadline na January 14.
Evaluation for AstraZeneca's EUA may be released within the month. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
And the government is eyeing to start the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines in the country as early as February. Let's take a closer look at the list of candidate jabs with One News's political editor Ed Lingao. Good afternoon, Bok. We have LGU starting to earmark funds for the shots. But what does this mean exactly? Can we count on these funds being spent completely purchasing COVID vaccines? And can anybody just pick up these vaccines?
Well, to begin with, not just anybody can buy these vaccines. These have to be done government to government. Because you have to realize that what government is giving out right now, and it has not yet given out any, are emergency use authorizations. These are not the same as commercial licenses or commercial permits to sell. So nobody can as of yet, buy a vaccine privately. They have to do it through the government. So even the LGUs need to course their requests or their negotiations through the national government, and only then can they get allocations going down the line. So on one hand, you have the national government setting aside 72.5 billion for its national vaccination program, and then you have the LGUs setting aside their own funds for their complementary or supplementary vaccinations.
All right, now this brings us to AstraZeneca. It is the choice of a lot of LGUs that have secured that have earmarked their funds so far, and they're saying it's all with AstraZeneca. It is also one of the cheapest vaccines so far, according to data from the UNICEF. Now, while this might be good news for LGUs gunning for AZ jabs, what other factors should we consider? I'm looking, of course, at the logistical part, storage and transportation, distribution. What are you seeing?
Okay. First of all, let's lay the baseline down. First of all, no vaccine has yet been given emergency use authorization by the Philippine government through the FDA. So until that is given, no vaccine is allowed to enter the country. No vaccine can be imported until an EUA is granted to any of the vaccine manufacturers. Now, that being said, what we have already are applications submitted by Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and just a few days ago, Gamaleya, the makers of Sputnik. Now, the FDA says that they have so far they are so far processing the first two. That's Pfizer and AstraZeneca, and the FDA says that the Pfizer vaccine may get EUA within the next few days or weeks. So malapit-lapit na raw. As far as Gamaleya, for example, is concerned, which is one of the cheaper vaccine brands, the FDA is saying that they have to submit more documents. They're still waiting for more documentation, more test results before they even consider Gamaleya's Sputnik vaccine. So that being said, those are the three vaccines that have so far submitted applications for EUA. We have not heard of any word from Sinovac and Sinopharm. The last time we heard from these two was around 8 days ago when they said they were going to apply. But as of yesterday, they have not yet applied, and that is still pending. Although the government, our government is saying that Sinovac is supposed to bring in by next month at least 50,000 doses. So that is a factor. You cannot bring in anything until it is approved. Now, to answer your question, what about the other elements concerned? The vaccine with the biggest logistical issue would be Pfizer's, which requires negative 70 degrees freezer. Now, we talked yesterday or last night to the Baguio City Mayor, Benjamin Magalong, and he was saying that they were able to buy a negative 70-degree freezer for 180,000 pesos. So it is not that expensive. It is reasonable for a lot of the LGUs. Of course, not for all LGUs, but if you put aside that much money, you can cram in 360,000 doses in a square meter of freezer space. So it is not that impractical, turns out.
Oh, that's good to hear. Now, going back to what you said, you already mentioned Sinovac. I just want to dig deeper into this. It has been clear in the past few weeks that the national government is very keen on Sinovac, which, according to the same data I was referring to earlier from UNICEF, comes out as one of the more expensive ones. Now,
yes.
Another issue with Sinovac is that they were expecting, like you said, a rollout by February. And then on the other hand, we have FDA Director General Eric Domingo saying that it will take him up to 3 weeks to process the EUA, which, like you said,
true,
has
21
not
days,
arrived.
yes.
Right? We were expecting it within last week. That was the news last week. But you're right, up to now, it's not yet there. So there seems to be, if it will require 3 weeks, then we will hit February. So what's up with that?
Well, everything is possible. You're only the first week of January. So if everything goes according to government's plan, they can still hit a target of last part of February for Sinovac to come in with approval of the EUA. But these are all assumptions until all the paperwork and the application is brought in, and then it's a bit too presumptuous to even talk about that. But you were referring to the prices of the vaccines. I think you're using the same reference as we are, which is the UNICEF vaccine dashboard that's available publicly. So anybody who would want to look at the prices and the supply of vaccines can access the UNICEF vaccine dashboard. If you look at the dashboard of UNICEF, you would notice that, as we said, AstraZeneca has one of the cheapest vaccines available But even if you look at AstraZeneca's prices, it seems that the Philippines got well, we are paying a bit more than most of the other countries are paying for the same vaccine. In the UNICEF dashboard, it says here that the Philippines is buying it at $5 per dose. That's around 250 pesos per dose. You need 2 doses, so that's around 500 pesos. So $5 per dose for the Philippines. But for Brazil, it was at $3.16. For the EU, it was $2.19. For the US, it was $4, and for Brazil, it was 3.16. For Bangladesh, it was 4.50. For India, it was $3.33. So we seem to be paying a bit of a higher price for the same vaccine. Although it does say here that for India's private sector, for private purchases, AstraZeneca seems to be putting the price up higher at $7 for private purchases. Next would be Sputnik, Russia's Sputnik. It's at $10 in Russia, which is surprisingly more expensive because in Latin America they're selling for $3 only. And then you have Sanofi ranging from $9 to $10, Pfizer for $14 to $19, Sinovac for $10 to $29, so almost 1,500 pesos per dose, and Moderna for $18 up to $34. That's around almost 2,000 pesos per dose. So that's a quick rundown of the prices listed on the UNICEF dashboard.
Thank you so much for helping us parse through that, Ed Linga, One News's political editor. And here are other stories we're keeping our eyes on. Government has expanded its travel restrictions to countries affected by the more infectious COVID-19 variant. Palace spokesman Harry Roque says that foreign travelers from China, Pakistan, Jamaica, Luxembourg, and Oman will not be allowed entry from noon tomorrow until Friday. Filipinos arriving from those countries will not be barred, but will have to undergo 14-day quarantine regardless of swab test results. Task Force PhilHealth has formally endorsed to the Ombudsman the report of the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission on the alleged corruption in PhilHealth. The task force has recommended charges against 25 officials involved in irregularities within the agency. They will face falsification, malversation, usurpation of authority, and graft charges. Quick break, but we will be back with more stories after that. Stay with us. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Sean Yao. Malacanang wants the National Telecommunications Commission to impose sanctions on internet service providers whose platforms are being used for child exploitation. Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles says under RA 9775, or the Anti-Child Pornography Act of 2009, providers must install technology that will immediately block access to child pornography. He says the Justice Department recommended this to stop what he calls the disturbing rise of online sexual exploitation amid the pandemic. The NBI is now looking into various reports of students selling lewd photos and videos online to finance their studies. The palace has also urged Congress to prioritize bills that will curb child porn. And the horrors of Taal volcano's eruption still haunts nearby residents 1 year later. JC Cosico reports to us from Talisay, Batangas to tell us their stories. Hi JC, how are residents coping?
Sean, the once left in the eruption of the Taal volcano remains fresh to residents of Batangas, as some of them are still in evacuation centers until now. Around 41 families are still staying at the evacuation site in Aya Elementary School in Talisay after the eruption. One of them is Volcano Island tour guide Sara Aala, who's among those who lost their homes and livelihood. She recalls how difficult it was to evacuate since she just gave birth 2 weeks before the incident. Another evacuee, Larina Arante, says living in the evacuation site is difficult, with 2 to 3 families occupying each tent. The LGU says plans for their relocation have been in place but was hampered by the pandemic. Councilor Lawrence Pesigan of Talisay LGU says construction of houses for affected residents will begin in the first quarter this year. Meanwhile, life is slowly getting back to normal in the province. Greeneries can now be seen compared last year when it was covered with dirt and ash. A mass was held here at the Talisay Baywalk to commemorate the first anniversary of the eruption. Sean, the Batangas PDRMO says the volcano island remains to be a ghost town as it has been declared a no-man's island. The provincial government says contingency plans are in place should the volcano erupt again, but admits that it's going to be challenging this time because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Back to you.
Thanks for that, JC. That was News 5's JC Cosico joining us over the phone from Talisay, Batangas. For more updates, visit News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World online. Visit our website, onenews.ph, for more in-depth analysis. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Sean Yao. We are One News.